Hello, my name is Eitan Blumin, and this is part 1 of the DocumentDB introduction series. In this part we will learn the most basic thing about DocumentDB, first steps of creating a DocumentDB program, and querying databases and collections. We will start by going to our Azure portal. The address is portal.azure.com. I will be assuming that you already have an Azure account and an Azure DocumentDB account. If you still don't have a DocumentDB account, you can do this by going to the Azure portal, clicking on New, clicking on Data plus Storage, selecting DocumentDB, and proceeding with the steps as instructed. This process will take at least 10 minutes to set up a new database, so I will not be doing this now. I will open a DocumentDB account that I already have. Sorry, I think I went too fast. Okay, so we go to Browse All, or Browse, same thing, and we go to DocumentDB account. Here we see the Madeira DocumentDB account. I will click on it. I already created it beforehand. And what we need here is this thing called keys. When we click it, we see some basic information that we will need in order to connect to our DocumentDB account in our program. Now, let's start with our program. We'll be developing in Visual Studio 2013. Let's make a new project. We will start with a basic console application. Windows C#. Let's call it DocDB demo. Okay. And first thing we need to enable our program to use the DocumentDB API is to import the DocumentDB package. We do it like this. Right click on the solution, select Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. Here on this top combo box, we need to make sure that we select Include Pre-Release. The default is Stable Only, but since DocumentDB is currently on its pre-release version, it won't show up if Stable Only is selected. So we need to select Include Pre-Release. Then we type in the Search Online box Azure DocumentDB. And the item we are looking for is this one, Microsoft Azure DocumentDB Client Library. We click Install. We select the projects which we want to install the package into. Right now we only have one. We click OK. And we accept some license agreements. And we can close this window here. And now we can see under References that we have these two things added. Microsoft Azure Documents Client and Newtonsoft JSON. And now we can proceed and import these references like this using Microsoft Azure Documents, and this is the first library we need. The second one is the same name, but at the end there's client, and another one where at the end it says link. These are the three libraries that are essential for our work with DocumentDB. Now remember the keys information we saw earlier in our portal. We need to put that into our program. Let's do it like this. We'll declare the global variable called a static variable of type string. Let's call it endpoint URI, and another one called auth key. Now we'll take their values from the portal. We go back to our portal, and we see here near the URI, we click on this button here, click to select all, It's selected all. Control C to copy, and we paste it here. We do the same thing either for the primary key or the secondary key. It doesn't matter. Control C, Control V. Next thing we need is to declare a static variable of type document client. We'll call it client. This variable is basically the API through which all of our DocumentDB operations will be performed. The DocumentDB API works through asynchronous methods. Asynchronous programming is very useful for multi-threading, parallelism, and such. But in this case, in this demo, we will force it to work synchronously. If you are a .NET programmer and you are already proficient in multi-threading programming, you will be able to find quite useful implementations to these methods. But these are beyond the scope of our webinar. Right, so what we need to do is declare a static async, right, task method, which we will call myMethod. This method is asynchronous, as noted by the async keyword, and we will execute it by typing its name, the parentheses, .wait. This basically tells this method to run, and then since it's a task, it's a waitable task, the main program will wait until it finishes. It basically means that despite it being asynchronous, it works in a synchronous way. So first thing we need in our program is to connect to our DocumentDB account, and we will do that like everything basically through our document client variable. The initial connection to our account will be by simply initializing this variable. We do it like this, using client, this is the variable, equals new document client, and then we need to send our URI as a URI object, endpoint URI, and the authorization key, which is located in auth key. This section here will contain all of our important code that works with DocumentDB. We will encapsulate this in a try-catch block. And add some basic debugging. This is all very basic, of course. And to prevent our program from automatically closing when it ends, we'll add a read key, console.read key, at the end of our main method. Right, so back to our program. First thing we'll do is see how we get a list of all of our databases in the DocumentDB account. We do this by declaring an IEnumerable variable of type database. Database is a class from the DocumentDB library. We will call it databases, and we will put into it the result of a link query that looks like this from DB in client.createDatabase query, select DB. Now DB is basically an alias that I invented. This is the invention of the alias, but it represents a database object because it returns from create database query. It also has some specific fields that I can return, like ID, resource ID, self-link, timestamp, and so on. But in this case, we will return the entire object. Okay, so now we have in the databases variable a list of all the databases. We need to print it. Let's use a for each loop. For each database, each item, in databases, we will do console.writeLine, and we will print the ID of the database. Let's see how it looks. I saved and I'm building the program. Let's see what happens. Okay, and these are the databases in my account. I'm gonna type something and close it. Okay. So this returns a list of all the databases in the account. Now, what if I am looking for a specific database? Let's say that I'm looking for a string database ID called, let's say, my.db. This is the ID of a database that we are looking for. So we will use a method very similar to this one, except we will return only one result, a specific result. We'll declare a database variable. We'll call it newDB. And its result will be from DB in client create database query, where db.id equals to database ID. Select DB. This returns a queryable result set. We need to convert it to as enumerable, and this enumerable we will execute a first or default function. This will return the first or only result. Right, this is C#, so we need double equality operator. Okay. Now, if this database exists, it will be saved inside this object. If it doesn't, this object will be equal to null. So if it is equal to null, we want to create it. In other words, if the database doesn't exist, create it. How do we create a database? We use a method called client create database async of the client API. It receives an object of type database. We will create it here, new database, and give it an ID of our variable, database ID. And this thing will be executing using the await keyword, because this is a task, just like our my method. This is also an asynchronous method, but since we are already inside an asynchronous method, we need to use the await keyword. This thing returns a database object, so we will put it inside our newDB variable. Let's add some debugging. Write created new database and we will put here the ID of our new database. Else, if we are here, this means that this database already exists. So let's notify ourselves of that. Great. Let's see how this looks. Nice. So we listed the databases, and we created a new database called MyDocDB. If I'm going to run this program once again, then it should appear in the list with the other databases. And there it is, MyDocDB. And it says database MyDocDB already exists. Nice. So now we know how to get a list of all the databases in the account. We know how to get a specific database based on an ID. And we know how to create a new database with a specific ID. Now we want to do exactly the same, but for collections. Collections are like tables in DocumentDB. Each collection has a list of documents, which are like records or rows. So let's do that. The code for listing and creating collections is very, very similar to what we just did with database. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy and paste this entire code and then just change particular things in each step. So this time our IEnumerable is not a database, it's a document collection. We will call it collections. The alias will be, let's say, call. And the method that we will use is not create database query, it's create document collection query. This method has to receive as a parameter the database where the collection should be looked for. In this case, we already have a database, it's the new DB, and the parameter that we need to send is the self-link of this new DB. So it's new DB dot self-link. Self-link is an inner identifier of objects within DocumentDB, and this is like a direct route to the object that we are looking for. So when we want to have a query for collection, we need to give the database a self-link, and if we want to have a query within a collection for a set of documents, then we need to send the self-link of the collection. But we will get to all of that later. Right. So we select the call. This is the alias we gave for the document collection object. It also has some parameters, for example, ID, indexing policy, resource ID, self-link, and so on. We will return the object in this case. And now for each object for each item in collections, we will write the ID. Okay. And now we have the collection ID. We will call it my collection. This is now a new collection, new call. And now we repeat the same thing. Let's copy this here to make it easier. From call in this thing here, create document collection query, new DB self-link, call ID equals collection ID, select call, and same thing as before, as enumerable, first or default. What did I miss? Oh, right, with the type. The type needs to be, of course, document collection. Moving on. If it's null, this means that we need to create it. So similarly to create database async, this time we need to use create document collection async, and this too receives the database self-link as a parameter. And of course the document collection, new document collection with an ID of collection ID. Moving on, created new collection, and if it exists, it means that this collection already exists. It's not new DB, this is new call. Okay, so this was very similar to what we just did with the databases, except this time it's with document collections. Let's see how this works. So these are my databases. My DocDB already exists, and we just created new collection called my collection. We will run this again, and we will see my collection return as a list of collections within my DocDB, and it says collection my collection already exists. So retrieving specific database and retrieving a specific collection are the most basic things we need for day-to-day working with DocumentDB. There are other methods of getting both of these things, but LinkU I think is the most common one and probably the easiest one, both for applicative DBAs as well as .NET programmers. Other methods include something called the Lambda Operators. It looks like this. We'll do this for our collection. So previously we had this. This is a LinkU query. We'll copy and paste it here. Save this as a comment. And this time we'll do it like this. Watch very carefully. Right. What we have here, this is a Lambda operator. This means that on the result of this method, which returns an I-ordered queryable object, we initiate the where method. This is a filter. Using the alias call, filtering on the column ID of call equals to collection ID, and on the result of this query we convert it to as enumerable and initiate first or default, return the first or default object. This is exactly the same as what we did here. Behind the scenes the exact same thing happens. Let's run it and see. Exactly the same thing. There are a few other methods of getting this information, but I think this is enough for a basic introduction. So this concludes our first part of the DocumentDB introduction series. In the next part we will learn how to start working with the documents themselves. Thank you. See you soon.